Hello and welcome to the podcast, the HNC Radio and Podcasting course, first one of the year. And we're very excited by the guests we've got on. Please let me introduce Patrick Dunne and Katie Smith of 1.5 Degrees Live. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, let me introduce the students that we've got here. Now, I'm going to do it in directional order. This may not be the same for everyone else, so it may be a bit strange about why certain people are coming in at certain times. But I've got up at the top, we've got Declan.
Hi.
Then we've got Michael.
Hello.
I've got Abdul Karim.
Hi.
We've got Paolo.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And we've got Sky.
Hi guys, I'm Sky. It's a pleasure to formally be introduced.
And then we've got Rebecca.
Hello.
And we've got Maddie.
Hi, lovely to have you here.
And then we have Mia.
Hi.
So those are all the students, and they're the ones who are very much going to be taking charge. They're the ones that have written the questions, prepared the questions. So they're the ones that have organised all of this. So I shall let them carry on. Now, Mia, you have a question.
So moving on from that, as we know, COP26 is coming to Glasgow at the end of November. Could you explain to us what exactly COP is?
So,
COP. Okay, so COP is...
it stands for Conference of the Parties, and so it's a conference that happens every year, with a big one every 5 years, and we're on a big one. And it's the parties to an agreement from the early 90s. So what happened was, oh God, I hope I'm doing this right. An international agreement was made, which set up the IPCC, which is the science body that reports on the state of the world's climate, and agreed that all the world's governments who were signed up to this agreement would meet every 5 years with these little in-between annual meetings to agree how to address climate change. So COP26, the Conference of the Parties of Government. So it's an intergovernmental meeting, but it has all sorts of other players involved. There's some controversial sponsors, I think, always. But there'll be lots of businesses involved. There'll be, it'll have a big fringe of fringe events. It will have sub events. It'll have people presenting this, that, and the other, as well as this meeting. And they're hoping it's going to be heads of state. And I think at the moment there's a question, will the Chinese premier come himself, or will send a representative, and this kind of thing. But almost all the negotiating is in progress or been done. So what happens in those 2 weeks is going to be kind of the last bits. Can we bring this together? What are the major sticking points? Can we overcome those sticking points with the pressure of everyone looking at us waiting for an outcome? There was an extremely disappointing one 10 years ago, where the issue that everything fell apart over the issue of global justice, and it fell apart over this idea of wealthy countries putting some money back into the countries that had previously been colonies, and supporting countries that had had that experience of being colonized to develop themselves further and to So there's a big issue about justice, which really spoiled. Essentially, those Copenhagen climate talks were seen as a failure, and then the Paris talks 5 years ago seen as a big success because there was an agreement, but the agreement was that everyone would voluntarily give their climate targets. So it's called NDCs, nationally determined contributions. So then the UK says, right, okay, we will reduce our this, that, and the other, and we'll increase this. So what the current plan from that 2015 thing sets us at 3.9 degrees warming, I think, by the end of the century. So it's not on track so the idea is that countries make a plan, and every year or every 5 years, countries come back and make a more ambitious plan. So the other thing with COP is that, well, people will make promises, but that doesn't mean that people will follow through on their promises. So we are not meeting our promises from 5 years ago.
Yeah. So Paris was where they said we're going to try and limit warming to 1.5.
2 degrees.
To 2 degrees.
Or
1.5 degrees.
Yeah.
And then the 1.5 degrees report came out where it spoke about the difference of the impact globally of what would happen at 1.5 degrees, what would happen at 2 degrees. And it was alarming, super alarming. And we were obviously quite we read quite a lot about that. We knew a little bit about that. And within a month of that report coming out, or us doing the Fringe show, Australia went to this Pacific conference in the Marshall Islands, and where they were greeted at the conference centre by children sitting in paddling pools to signify rising sea levels and all this kind of stuff. And the Australian government was attempting to have removed from their agreement with the Pacific countries any reference to 1.5 degrees as a target. So 1.5 degrees was the ideal target, 2 degrees, and none of it was legally binding. So nobody is on course, anywhere close to being on course to having any meaningful reductions in their emissions that is going to lead to global warming limited to 1.5 or 2 degrees. So COP this year, the big hope is can we get anybody to agree anything that is legally binding?
So you'd say the main focus of this COP is to basically come up with things that are going to be possible. Is that what you'd say? That are going to be achievable?
I think the hope is to make the nationally determined contributions that people have set out and spoken a lot about in the previous 5 years. The hope is to make something that is going to be a legally binding framework that countries are going to be accountable for, and the big polluters, the European Union and North America and Russia and China and Australia or whatever, there is going to be some sort of international legal framework that is going to reduce emissions. I think what we've had previously was everybody agreed to mark their own homework, and as you will know, set their own homework and not let anybody else look at their homework. But everybody's I've got great homework, and where we've realised now is that there wasn't any homework was done, basically. So that is what the activists are hoping for is a legally binding framework. What Boris Johnson might be hoping for is an opportunity to say how great Britain is doing. And there's lots of people who are hoping to sell sort of carbon trading and future technologies and all that kind of stuff. There's a really good organization called the COP26 Coalition, and they are they've got some really good information about COP and some of the activist stuff that is going on around COP, and how COP is being framed by the politicians that are going, and what is possible in COP. So certainly recommend having a look at them as well.
They're an umbrella organisation for loads and loads of campaigning organisations at COP. So they're a very good place to start.
I was muted there, not for the first time I've tried to speak when I've been muted, as every single student will attest to. Cool. Paolo, you've got, so now some of that was covered in Paolo's question. But what we'd like to do is just ask it again, just in case there's anything there that you want to add to that. So Paolo, if you go ahead with your question. So you're muted, Paolo.
Sorry about that. What do you hope will come out of COP26, and what do you think will actually come out of the conference?
Oh God.
So I think we answered part of that already. The hope. I think it's going to get really, really hyped as like humanity's last chance to do anything about the crisis. It fits within like Hollywood style like way of thinking about it. It's not something that we should hope will make us a major change. It's being led by the establishment, and it's not going to be radical. We can hope that it will be better, but it is not something, when it gets to the end and it's not good enough, or possibly if it falls together altogether, that is not the end, because like meaningful change is going to come from like grassroots, and any kind of systematic change or systemic change, don't know which is the right word, is going to come from like grassroots. So it'll be interesting to watch, and we should make our opinions known. It's a good opportunity to hold government to account. It might set us up with the framework for some of these interesting things that young people taking governments to court. So it might set us up with legal precedent for that kind of stuff. But don't get horribly depressed if it all falls to pieces, because Boris Johnson is not going to be the person that dismantles capitalism.
I also think it's going to be very high profile. I think hopefully it'll be difficult for lots of stuff to happen in darkness. Hopefully lots of conversations and dealings and implications will be exposed, because the eyes of like the world will really be on this conference. So hopefully that will be positive, and will be, I think. Yeah, so I hope that things will be exposed and not too many bad deals are done kind of behind the scenes. But yeah, it's going to be hugely hyped, and what Katie said, it won't be great, and let's hold on, because hopefully it won't be the end.
Michael, you've got a couple of questions now.
You've both alluded to the fact that it's in the best interests of the elite to maintain status quo. So what I'd like to ask you is, to what extent do you think that politicians really care?
I think it's a big mix, and I think it's very easy to feel sometimes that nobody cares. And I think, we have at the moment a very unrepresentative cabinet in Westminster. So that feeling, I think it's easy to believe that there's a lot of people running the country who think that they will be fine if everything goes badly. I don't know. But, it does feel like, it's in the interest of some people to continue because they're very wealthy and they may be quite old and, maybe. But I think one of the things that is very confusing about the whole situation is that it isn't really in anyone's interests to continue, because, if you eat and breathe and drink water, then, it's not in your interest to try and live at 50 degrees or, whatever. Like, as a living part of the planet, is in no one's interest to maintain it. And I think lots of politicians do care. I think people are there's a certain entrapment in the system, right, okay, well, we need to put this to motion, and then that, and if we can change this, and there's that kind of procedural way of doing things that can be incredibly frustrating. had a very fierce altercation with the previous Labour leader at one point when he came out and said at a protest, "Oh, keep it up! You guys, you need to keep protesting." And we were like, "We've just watched you vote against the new climate legislation. Like, you need to do your thing." But I think it's that balance that a lot of politicians are looking like over their shoulder, or they're looking at, "Oh, well, will I lose votes for that?" or whatever. Or our political system runs on this like 5-year system maximum. So it's very difficult for our system to tackle a problem that is like huge and to take on things that take a really long time. So I think, I like to think that there are a lot of people who really want to do the best in politics, and people are trapped inside a system that's really slow and difficult and problematic. And partly that's what democracy is about. But it'd be really interesting to see more use of citizens' assemblies. Ireland's done amazing things using citizens' assemblies. And that way, a group of citizens, you get selected in the same way you would get selected for a jury. It's a random selection. Scotland's had one. The UK's had one. Neither government wanted to listen to, no one wanted to make it legally binding what the Citizens' Assembly advocated. But both of those came out with pretty radical stuff, and both of them started with a pretty unradical brief, if that makes sense. So using that technique of citizens' assemblies is something that has been really effective. And I think in Ireland it was used for the abortion bill and for gay marriage. That both of those pieces of legislation were developed and presented through a citizens' assembly, and it enabled that country where the politicians were terrified of, like, oh God, what about the religious right? We'd never be able to pass that. We'd never be able to pass that. And actually, when someone else presented it, then who didn't need to get re-elected, that became a way of doing things. So I think I like to hope that a lot of politicians really do care. So I
was just going to say, considering you've said that and what you said earlier, do you think it's a virtue signal exercise, or do you like to think that they actually are interested? That was a footnote to the initial question.
Well, there's some definite virtue signalling happening, and there's certainly, part of a politician's brief is to kind of, to have pictures taken with the right people or whatever, and I'm certain that lots of them take pictures with youth strikers and protests or whatever, because that will go on their Twitter feed, and hopefully they'll never have to pass legislation that is going to make impactful change. But I think when you look at kind of the first past the post and some of the systems that we have to elect people in the UK, especially Westminster, I think they could certainly be better to make better representative democracy in this country. So I hope that we do see some kind of electoral change. I know there is pressure from some parties to try and improve some of that stuff. And the whole virtue signaling versus real committed change, that is really difficult. But hopefully people will see that their political future depends on it. And there is no route to kind of political power, without change. Hopefully that will be a course that becomes undeniable to them. Unfortunately, I don't think it entirely is yet.
Right, and I've got another one. This is a nicer question. What do you plan to do for COP26?
Good question.
We're just starting kind of making some plans. We decided not to try and do
a reading,
our own thing, and do a reading. So we're going to try and be part of the sort of general cogs. We have offered our sofa bed for an activist coming from a country. I mean, the price of hotels in Glasgow is like through the roof at the moment. So we've offered our sofa bed for someone who's going to come maybe from an Indigenous community or from a poor country who wouldn't otherwise be able to access the talks. We are looking at joining there's a mass cycle from Edinburgh to Glasgow on the 6th of November. There's a big day of action on the 6th of November.
Yeah, so global day of action on the 6th. Join in
with some of the big stuff. And I'm just looking at, there's a lot of like background support for activists as well. And I think, you know, we can see at the moment, you know, there's legislation just gone through in Westminster about dealing with protests and criminalising protests. So there's a huge support system in place. The Scottish Legal Activist Project, there's like stuff within XR, and in order to like support people through the process of potentially being arrested. And so I've always been involved quite a lot in that kind of process of like, you know, making sure anyone who does come into contact with the police, that someone's watching, that, you know, police behaviour is monitored, that person, you know, we know that they've gone somewhere, that someone tracks which police station they end up in, someone picks them up, and someone makes sure that they have, you know, the legal advice that they need. So that's a big behind the scenes kind of thing that's going on. We might do some cooking. Yeah,
so when last year, the year before, last time it was on, it was supposed to be in Chile, and then there was like a massive political uprising. And so they moved it to Madrid, and within like 2 weeks notice or something like that. And 500,000 people went to Madrid to like be on the streets and protest and all that kind of stuff. And obviously it's a lot warmer in Madrid, so there won't be that many people in Glasgow. And obviously with COVID, there's, you know, lots of people won't be able to travel due to vaccine, like red list countries and all that kind of stuff. And so there's going to be a lot less people than that, but there are going to be lots and lots and lots and lots of people coming to Glasgow who will need, you know, food, and there will be community kitchens set up, and there will be church halls to house people and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, we hopefully will try and find somewhere to be useful in and around that stuff, whatever that might be. There's loads to do. So
there's loads of really like kind of I don't know, low heroism, like, you know, low glamour like roles to do in anything where there's loads of people join. So we've always been involved in the kind of like the well-being side of things and trying to like keep tensions down, or like deal with people who are aggressive or drunk or like in the wrong place or like vulnerable to the police, or all sorts of things. So there's loads of stuff that goes on. The people in the kitchens always have, you know, the most love. And yeah, so there's lots of stuff to do. So yeah, we're going to try and be a bit of a part of that. And we both also have to go to work those 2 weeks. Yeah. I work in a hospital, and Paddy works as a gardener. So there's also got to be a bit of, we've got to like, yeah, a bit of that.
Go to work.
Do you imagine, I don't know if you know this, but today ScotRail announced that the workers are striking to coincide with the COP26. Do you envisage that to have any impact at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know how they are preparing, but I imagine that there's going to be people coming on every rail line and every bus line into Glasgow every day. And I think we're yet to see like the impacts of COVID on these talks and whether that will significantly change it. But I think it's going to be enormously disruptive for Glasgow, and you know, a really huge thing for the transport. So I hope they're putting on extra transport in general. But I also saw that news today that there'll be no Sunday trains. So that's yeah, I was like mentally like arrest support's role on Sundays to try and manage that. But I imagine it's going to be messy, and I don't fully understand the terms of the train strike, but it's been going on a very long time, and I really hope they settle something soon.
It's to do with workers getting paid. It's to do with the wages, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've been told.
It's been a long time holding out. So
and it's not very. It doesn't seem to be very well. Like it doesn't seem to be in the media very much. But it's been going on a long time. So I'm in solidarity with the workers trying to get better pay and conditions on the rail lines, and and with the nurses and the NHS workers who are after a pay increase as well. And we've got to support these striking efforts. And I
think we'll notice it. That's those Sundays in COP. I think it will become noticeable.
Yeah. But good for them. More power to them.
Thank you.
And Abdul Karim, you have another question.
Yes. How would you advise people listening at home to go about expressing their strong feelings about COP26?
Well, I think there's going to be a massive march on the 6th. So it's Saturday the 6th, the middle Saturday of COP. So there'll be a mass stuff there to go and be involved in. Bring a banner, bring a placard, or there'll be opportunities, I think, probably to volunteer if you want to be a steward or all sorts of stuff like that. And I think be involved. It's the first COP that has been in a country that I've been in, and I'll be very proud to be a part of it and be an extra number in the protest, in the march, and to have my hopefully have our collective voice heard in some way. So I hope people have an opportunity to safely be involved and contribute to it.
There's a very old school. Oh, it's all frozen. I wonder whether we've frozen for you guys. There's always the old school technique of write to your MPs, write to your MSPs, go and meet them, tell them what you think. Because essentially their job is to represent what you think. Put it up on their agenda. I think, sometimes there's a huge amount of lobbying that happens. And so do your own personal, we person lobbying and tell them what you think. There's a website, writetothem.com.org. Write to them anyway, which you put your postcode and it brings you up everyone who represents you. So that's another option. And then art, music, amazing poster campaigns, podcasts, obviously, and whatever your comfortable form of expression is. We need variety, I think, because we've got to keep it interesting. So we're going to be doing it for a while.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Rebecca, you've got a last couple of questions.
As we're wrapping up now, I think I'd ask, what have 1.5 Degrees Live got planned for the future?
Well, so the most recent report, the what's it called? Assessment report. They really need to work on their social media and their titling of things and their general communications, because you go on their Twitter even and it's impenetrable, and you think, God, if you could just communicate some of this stuff a bit more effectively, it would be great. So the AR6 is coming out in 3 parts, and we've just had the first part, which is what we read for a day in Parliament in August, and the next 2 parts are going to come out next year, we think. We hope
February and April.
And one of those is going to be about the human impact.
One's going to be about the impact, so it should be easy for us to understand. It's going to be the one we've just had has been about physical science, so some of that was a bit more challenging if you don't have that background, which I don't. The impact is about what is this going to do to us. So that's February, and then April or so it's going to be what can we do about it. So we tend to have an ongoing debate about whether or not we're going to do the next report as a big reading. So we might do that.
We get to the point where never again, we're not doing it again. And then the next one comes out and we're like, oh my God, we have to do something. Yeah.
we've got loads of resources. What we loved with the 1.5 degrees report was that we just sent our posters and the kind of like we changed the font so it's readable and took out all the like in-text references and stuff. So and put in all the acronyms, put them in as words. So we said we could send that to anyone that wanted to do their own. So it's really nice if other people do it as well.
Yeah, so it's just on a G drive, so people can just access it wherever and get all of the stuff that we use. So a group was able to do it in Australia, 2 groups did it in Australia, 1 did it in New Zealand, all that kind of stuff. You know, we don't own any of it, we're not making any money out of it, and it was great to just kind of share all that kind of stuff. And then like the most immediate things we're doing is somebody's like made, I think someone's doing a pilgrimage or something like that from, oh God, maybe from Madrid to Glasgow. So we've been asked by like a vicar in Dunbar who's read for us previously, and she's like, great. So can we like prepare like 2 or 3 hours worth of stuff and provide some resources for them? So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. There's a Take One Action film festival in Glasgow, and someone is putting on a film. So they've asked us to do like provide some materials and do a short thing for them. So that's going to be happening in the next few weeks. And then just be involved in whatever capacity we can for COP, and then probably wake up in March with some headlines and think, oh God, we better like
do the next one.
Do the reason.
Yeah, I think we did it originally because we thought, oh, well, it's not like ordinary folk just have to get their heads around this stuff because it's not being addressed in Parliament and that kind of stuff. And, you know, we would really hope that, you know, we don't have to I mean, they're massive. The new ones are massive. The 1.5 one was just a teeny weeny 50-hour thing. Whereas this is, you know, the next ones are like, I mean, I don't know, 300 hours, something huge.
So if any of you want to read, we'll email you.
But, you know, we would hope that enough action is being taken that you don't have that desperate feeling of like, ordinary folk need to understand this because we need to do it ourselves without governments. So, you know, we live in hope. We'll see what happens.
And if listeners want to find out more or get in contact with 1.5 Degrees Live, where should they go?
Instagram, 1.5 Degrees Live. Twitter, we're on. We've got a website which isn't that up to date, but the Instagram, it is up to date when we like do stuff, but the Instagram is probably the best way, and you can message us there. All the general socials, best way to get in contact.
And all of those addresses, the Instagram, the Twitter, and the website, will all be in the show notes for the podcast. And anything else you wish to send to us, we will happily put those on as well.
Great.
And with that, your read at the Parliament there, just the recent ones, and it was a very difficult read. The enthusiasm of everyone at the start of the read, and then you could feel it slightly drift as the more and more information came out. But I thought it was a very interesting point you'd said about the fact that this can be a depressing read to read by yourself, but to read it with everyone else who's also campaigning, that's also working, will add that inspiration for you, and it will stop you getting too downhearted, which I think is a big risk whenever you look at this big problem. And I thought it was a very good thing that you did to try and sort of help people go, look, we're all in this together. It will be downhearted, but look at people around you and look at the support around you. That can give you that sort of support and urge to continue that fight. I thought it was very well done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And also, thank you very much for doing this. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much. That was absolutely fantastic. And I'd just like to say thank you to Patrick and Katie from 1.5 Degrees for doing that.
Thanks everyone for all of your questions and for being interested and involved, and good luck with your podcast and your course and stuff, and look forward to listening to you doing radical stuff in the next wee while.
Thank you very much indeed.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Good night everyone.
Bye.
Bye.